formerly known as Kristen Booker. Good afternoon, ma'am. Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Investigator Kristen Schubert.
And how do you spell your last name, ma'am?
Schubert.
What do you do for a living?
I work for the Chattanooga Police Department Crime Scene Unit.
What do you do specifically for the crime scene unit?
I am a crime scene investigator.
How long have you worked in that capacity as a crime scene investigator?
Going on 8 years.
Have you received any kind of specialized training that assists you in the performance of your duties as a crime scene investigator?
I have. When you first get hired on there, you do 6 months of field training with a senior investigator. I have attended and graduated from the National Forensic Academy. I am certified through them as a crime scene investigator. I am also a certified crime scene analyst through the International Association for Identification, which is the largest forensic organization. I have received additional training in crime scene reconstruction, shooting incident reconstruction, death investigation, bloodstain pattern analysis, and advanced bloodstain pattern analysis.
What is the National Forensics Academy?
It is an intensive 10-week-long forensic training school in which investigators from all over the country and sometimes from overseas will be sent by their departments to stay at that location for 10 weeks of various forensic disciplines.
Where's that held?
That is in Oak Ridge, Tennessee.
Who puts that on?
It's called the Law Enforcement Innovation Center. It's part of the LEIC, which is connected to the UT Knoxville campus. It is located in Oak Ridge, but it's an offset from the UT.
What's LEIC?
Law Enforcement Innovation Center.
Oh, okay. Ma'am, I'd like to ask you, were you working as a crime scene investigator on November the 28th of 2022?
Yes, it was.
On that day, did you have an occasion to respond to 110 Tremont Street, specifically apartment 210?
Yes, I was requested by Investigator Johnson.
What time were you requested?
I believe she called me somewhere around 7 a.m. and I arrived there around 8:20 that morning.
Were you responsible for that crime scene?
I was not.
How long had other investigators been there, do you know?
Several hours, as far as I'm aware.
Why were you called in?
I was called in by Investigator Johnson to just assist in the documentation of the Blue Star process.
Now, ma'am, we've seen a lot of Blue Star pictures, and I promise this will be the last one. It's okay. Now, I'm handing you what's been marked for identification purposes as item 178. You recognize that?
Yes, I do.
Ma'am, what are the difficulties in taking photographs of Blue Star?
The camera settings need to be adjusted on the camera to help capture because it is such a faint reaction sometimes. You have to adjust the camera's sensitivity to light to be able to capture that glow from the Blue Star if there is a positive reaction.
Did you take that photograph that we see there?
Yes, I did.
Does it fairly and accurately depict the Blue Star reaction that you observed in the photograph on the 28th of November 2022?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, move to admit that photograph into evidence.
Yep, exhibit 178.
Yes, Your Honor, and I previously showed it. surprised too, you know. There we go. All right. Now, ma'am, the photograph in question that was just admitted into evidence, I'm going to project up on the screen.
No problem. Take it down.
There we go. Ma'am, is that the photograph that was just admitted into evidence that you took at 110 Tremont Street on the 28th day of November 2022?
Yes, it is.
Tell the jury what Blue Star is.
Blue Star is a chemiluminescent blood reagent, and investigators use it to help identify areas of interest where the blood may not be visible to the naked eye. When it is applied, it reacts with the iron in your blood, and if there's a positive reaction, you will see that blue or light blue glow, and that is then documented with photographs, and swabs of those areas are taken for further testing.
Have you received specialized training on the application of Blue Star
We have received training on the application, yes.
at the National Forensics Academy?
Yes.
So are there other substances other than the iron in blood that can cause a Blue Star reaction?
There are several false positives with Blue Star.
Such as?
There's weasel blood, ferret blood, which is an odd thing. There's some root vegetables, some cleaning products.
I'd like to focus on the cleaning products. What type of cleaning products?
There's all kinds of different ones. Bleach in specific will give a false positive. However, the reaction looks different than that of blood.
How does it look different than that of blood?
Depending on how soon it's been applied, sometimes it can look more white. It's not quite as an intense, long-lasting glow that you might get from blood. So you'll see it, and then it will fade rather quickly. And like I said, sometimes it's not quite as blue. It's more of a white, very, very light blue reaction.
Do you know whether or not isopropyl alcohol can give a false positive of a Blue Star?
I would have to look up specifically, but I know that there are several chemicals, some root vegetables, and then obviously animals within that family that will.
But you don't know hydrogen peroxide or isopropyl alcohol?
Not specifically, I do not.
Okay. So after you assisted with the photographing of the Blue Star reaction that we see here, were you able to make any observations about how high up the various walls, the door that we see right there in that photograph, the Blue Star reaction went?
In this particular instance, I know when I was there, we did not spray all the way up to ceilings and things like that. It was midway up the door. In this particular case, the door handle is, it's kind of level with the door handle area.
Which would be approximately how high off the ground?
3.5 feet.
3.5 feet, somewhere in there?
Yeah,
Okay. Standard size door, though?
yeah.
In addition to doing the Blue Star photography, did you observe blood on any other surfaces inside 110 Tremont?
There were several items or several areas marked in that apartment when I arrived that was being handled by the lead investigators and the other investigators that were on scene prior to my arrival.
Do you know who the lead investigator was on scene?
Investigator Johnson.
And you mentioned other areas being handled. What were those other areas?
They were in the living room, bathroom. There were areas in the bedroom that had been marked, and carpet samples had been taken. This all occurred prior to me getting there. I observed some areas in the bathroom that were near the door frame that had been marked, down below near the floor in the door jamb area. These had all been marked by Investigator Johnson prior to my arrival.
Are you familiar with a term called cast-off?
I am.
What is cast-off, ma'am?
Ultimately, in very layman's terms, it is basically a blood-bearing item in motion where the blood then releases from that item and comes into contact with a surface, whether that be a wall, a chair, a ceiling.
What do you mean by a blood-bearing object?
So if you were to use a baseball bat and hit somebody with a baseball bat, that first impact is not going to cause necessarily blood to be on that bat to be dispersed in a cast-off pattern. Once the skull is fractured or opened and blood starts to pool in that area, the second hit to somebody would then create more blood to be deposited on the bat. Once that bat is then pulled backwards again in motion after blood has been dispersed onto that item, then the blood drops would release from the object as it's in motion, and when it comes into contact with another surface, it creates what they call a cast-off pattern.
Do they have a unique appearance?
Generally, depending on the size of the item, sometimes you get more elongated or elliptical type shape in a very kind of linear pattern. Like I said, the baseball bat would create a closer to 90-degree blood drop in the beginning as it hits the ceiling, and as it goes backwards, it becomes much more, the blood drops become much more linear, much more elongated as it goes backwards, depending on the angle that that blood drop is hitting that surface.
Does it create like a teardrop shape?
If there is directionality as to where that blood drop is traveling, you will have like a terminal end. So you've got your leading edge where the blood drop hits your surface, and then as it hits your surface, it starts to stretch out and sometimes will leave what's called a tail. The tail is indicating the direction that blood drop was traveling when it hit the surface.
Did you observe any cast-off in 110 Tremont Street?
There was one spot in the picture that I saw in the bathroom. There, I observed there were two very small stains by the door frame that leads from the bathroom into the bedroom. There were two very small stains up above, kind of off to the, I guess it would be the east. So up into the east of the door frame, there were two blood drops that I saw that had tails on them, indicating they were traveling up and east of the door frame.
Thank you, Matt. For context, this has been admitted into evidence as Exhibit 53. You reference a door frame leading into a bedroom. Do you see that door frame in this photograph?
It would be this door frame.
In which wall did you observe the cast-off?
It would be this wall.
Okay. for reference, we can see a kind of silver metallic object that's running horizontally with a circular end. Do you recall what that was?
That was like a towel bar.
Towel bar? Okay, thank you. Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to familiarize yourself with Exhibit 179. It's a collective exhibit, 1 through 8. Okay? Would you mind taking a look at those? You recognize those photos?
I do.
What do they depict, General?
This is the area that we were just discussing in the bathroom, that's just east of the door frame in the photo.
Do they fairly and accurately show what you saw?
Yes.
Move to admit into evidence 179 128.
So admitted.
Can I publish? Thank you. All right, ma'am. This is 179-1. Could you please point out to the jury where in this photograph the blood is in your reference?
Up here, where you can see these tails on the end of the stains.
So, if we were to look at that for directionality, what general direction was it coming from?
So if you're looking at the tails are going this direction, which means the leading edge of the blood stain was down here below, showing that the blood drops came from this general direction.
Okay, so zooming back out would place it down towards the door itself,
That's correct.
and the threshold of the door, the transition from one room to the other.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm going to show you 179-2. Is that just a closer picture?
Yes, it's the same area of the door.
179-3.
This is a close-up of some of the spatter that was below that. The drops that we were looking at a second ago were up here towards the top.
When you say spatter below it, could you please point that out for the jury?
It's these more circular drops on the wall that don't, from what I can see from this photo, don't show as much directionality as the other ones.
And I zoomed in. Would you mind pointing those out again?
These ones.
So even though it's got somewhat of an elongation, it's not sufficient for you, based upon your training at the National Forensics Academy and also the blood pattern.
Advanced blood stain patterns.
Not enough to draw any conclusions on that.
There's small tail here, and possibly here, but because of the angle of the photo and the clarity of the photo, I would stick with the ones that are very evident, that they have directionality in it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And now 179-4, 5, and 6. Is what we see in photograph 6 one of those ones that you described as having a tail?
This is, you can see, it's hard to see in that photo because
I
there's
can
glare,
zoom in a little more.
but there's a leading edge right here. Then the blood drop hits the rest, it elongates, and then the tail is the terminal end where that blood stain ends.
Thank you, ma'am. In addition to responding to 110 Tremont Street, taking the photograph and taking a look at some blood on the east wall of the bathroom, which is the wall separating the bedroom from the bathroom to bedroom, did you collect any evidence in this case?
Right before I was about to leave the scene, Investigator Cottrell from the homicide unit pulled up and stated that there was an item that was still inside the apartment that was of interest, and she entered with me and we collected a 1/4 zip gray long sleeve
Do you recall the brand of the?
I do not.
Okay. Might have them over here. So- I'm handing you what's been marked and admitted into evidence as item 153. If you mind taking a look at this, tell me if you recognize it.
Yes, I do.
And what is that item?
This is the shirt I entered with Investigator Control to collect from inside the apartment.
So that's the 1/4 zip sweatshirt, sweater, whatever you want to call it, that you collected?
Yes,
Okay, thank you. Was that the only item that you collected at 110 Tremont Street?
yes, it is.
Were you working the following day? The
Yes, I was.
29th? Okay. On that day, did you happen to do anything regarding the missing person case at this point of Miss Jasmine Pace?
I was contacted by Detective Slaughter from the homicide unit and asked to begin processing of the Jasmine Pace vehicle.
Specifically, ma'am, what were you looking for inside the vehicle?
He had instructed us to do DNA, fingerprints, and Blue Star, and then look for receipts from a certain day to the day of the search.
One of the places that you looked for DNA evidence was that steering wheel.
Yes, it was.
Why would you look at the steering wheel of the vehicle for DNA?
The steering wheels obviously are a highly touched location. You have to maneuver and manipulate the steering wheel when driving. There is a braided surface on the inside of most steering wheels that is a little more abrasive. So when you're looking at touch DNA and where somebody might slough off DNA at, that abraded, rougher surface of your steering wheel where you're grabbing and you're maneuvering it a lot is a good location to swap for that.
You mentioned touch DNA. What is touch DNA?
It's just, they're able to do more with less. They don't need quite as big of a sample nowadays to be able to identify somebody. So touch DNA is just saying that when you touch something, we're gonna go and swab it, and the lab now is able to use such a minute amount to get your DNA profile it's called touch DNA.
Just because you swab something, is there a guarantee that you're going to collect a large enough quantity of DNA for analysis based on
Absolutely
results?
not.
Okay. So it's just kind of a shot, hoping that you catch something.
More or less, there are several areas that we would do on a vehicle, knowing the lab has told us some of them don't usually produce much for us, but we do it because there is an off chance that we might get it, so.
And in this case, did you actually swab the steering wheel for touch DNA?
We do it to collect DNA, yes.
Did you do it on this particular occasion?
Yes, I did.
How do you collect that?
The cotton swabs come in packets of 2. So we would put on gloves, you would open the package of cotton swabs, like I said, there's 2 in each package. We use distilled sterile water, it comes in a little container. You break open that container, you would then wet one of the swabs, leaving one dry. In the area in which you're wanting to collect, you would then use both swabs in that area, the wet and the dry. Then you would package those in a DNA box. That DNA box is then placed in another container, and that is sent to the lab for testing.
Why would you need to wet the swab first?
There are several reasons. Sometimes it might be really hot outside or something, and those cells might be stuck to something, so you dampen that surface and then use the dry one to collect behind it. In cases where you've got a wet stain, it may not be necessary to wet one and have one dry, because if you're doing a pooling of blood per se, it's already wet, so you just use both swabs in that wet spot. When you're talking about a drier location, sometimes you need to wet it or hydrate that area a little bit and then use the dry swab to come behind it and collect it off that surface.
So if it's wet, it's easier to transfer from the surface to the cotton swab.
Rather than something that's stuck to a surface,
And
yes.
dry.
Yes.
How long does it take for something to dry out like that?
Yes, it depends on the environmental conditions.
Sure. Could dry out in
would assume so, yes.
Blood specifically, can that dry out in a couple of days?
Yes.
I'm handing you what's been marked for identification as 180. You recognize that?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
This is the swab taken from the steering wheel of the Equinox.
Did belong to whom?
Jasmine Case.
Your Honor, I move to admit into evidence 180, the swab taken from Jasmine Case's steering wheel.
So admitted.
Now, was that item submitted to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation Crime Laboratory for analysis?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and that's indicated by what?
They have their pricing, their tape at the bottom that specifically says TBI lab.
So that item was sent to the lab.
Yes, it was.
I'd like to fast forward, if I could, to December the 1st, 2022. Were you working on that day?
Yes, it was.
Where were you working?
The Chattanooga Police Department Crime Scene Unit.
On the afternoon of the 1st, were you sent to another location?
I was contacted by the Homicide Division and notified that they believed they had found a suitcase possibly containing human remains off of Suck Creek Road.
Did you respond to that location?
I did.
When you arrived, who all was present?
There were several people present. And there were several officers as well as several individuals from the Homicide Unit. Shortly after I arrived, the medical examiner also arrived.
Did you have an opportunity to look at the suitcase?
I did. It was pulled up onto level ground by the time I had arrived on scene, but I did observe it and document and photograph that and collect evidence from that area.
Ma'am, I'm now going to retrieve from what's been previously marked for identification only as 173. Would you please tell me if you recognize this item?
Yes, I do.
What is this item?
This is the suitcase that was recovered at Suck Creek Road.
Your Honor, I move at this time item 173 into evidence.
So admitted.
Where did this suitcase go after Suck Creek Road?
Because we believed it had human remains inside of it, the medical examiner wanted it transported as is. So Hamilton County EMS came out to the scene. They loaded the suitcase onto the EMS truck and transported it to the medical examiner's office.
Where did you go to the medical examiner's office as well?
Yes, I did.
And what happened when you all arrived at the medical examiner's office?
The medical examiner x-rayed the suitcase, and then once determining what was inside, I began documenting as we removed these remains.
Ma'am, I'm handing you what's been marked for identification as Exhibit 181, 1 through 5. Familiarize yourself with those. Generally, what do those photographs show?
This is a series of photos that shows the process once we removed the victim from the suitcase while inside the bags. We placed them on the table. And this is a series of photos to show the process of taking each layer of the garbage bags off. And so it depicts that process.
Your Honor, the state would move to advance an evidence the collected exhibit.
So admitted.
Your Honor, I would also give an admonition that at least one of these photos some people may find disturbing.
Ladies and gentlemen, one of the photos has been indicated is going to be graphic in nature. If it's something that is will require you to leave the court, you probably should do that. I'll remind the media of the court's admonition earlier.
Sir.
Showing you 181-1. You recognize the individual shown on the right side of this photograph?
Yes, I do. That is Dr. Cogswell.
Who is he?
He is the Hamilton County Medical Examiner.
And what are we looking at in the center of this photograph, ma'am?
This is the bags with the victim's remains in it outside of the suitcase.
In all, how many layers of bags were there?
There were 3.
1812. What does this photograph show?
This is looking into layer number 2. We had just cut the outside layer of the bag here, and on the inside you can see the second layer.
1813.
This would be when we entered the innermost layer, the 3rd layer of the garbage bags.
Ma'am, there appears to be a metallic object towards the center of this photograph. Can you identify those for us?
This is the set of handcuffs, one to her wrist and one to her ankle,
On which side?
her right side.
1814.
This is Dr. Cogswell peeling back each layer of the garbage bags.
And the one, Judge, that people probably find most disturbing, 1815. What are we looking at here?
This is just another view as we're getting through the layers of garbage bags to the victim. And you can see I believe it's the shackle on the left side.
Left shackle.
And the left, around the left ankle.
What's the difference between the handcuffs and the shackle?
Well, the handcuff had 2 locations, so there was one to attach to her hand and one to her ankle. The shackle only had 1 cinch and then a chain.
Were you present for the entirety of the autopsy?
I was not. I was there to collect the suitcase as well as the garbage bags after they were removed. They needed to dry out, so I took custody of those items and I left. I did not stay further.
Now, handing you what's been marked for identification is item 182. Have you seen item 182 before?
Yes, this is the garbage bag, number 1, the most exterior.
So going back to 181-1, that would be the garbage bag that we see in its entirety. That's the only bag that we can see in this photo.
That's correct.
And you collected that from the medical examiner's office?
That's correct.
Did you place that item into evidence?
It was hung to dry. Once it was finished processing, yes, it did go to property.
And that's the same bag.
Yes, it is.
Move 182 into evidence, Your Honor. Manny, it was been marked for identification as 183. Recognize this item?
Yes, I do. This is the middle garbage bag, the second layer.
So if we're looking at 181-2, can we see it in that photo?
It would have been this layer here.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. That's the same garbage bag shown in that photograph in the middle.
Yes, it is.
I'll move 183 into evidence, Your Honor.
So moved.
Finally, ma'am, can you please take a look at this? Tell me if you've seen it before.
This is layer number 3. So this would have been the one closest to the victim.
Going now to 181-3, where would that be? Thank you. Now, ma'am, you mentioned a drying process. Where was that done?
We had set up a drying area in our vehicle processing bay. We hung string from the ceiling and we were able to document like which bag was which, and then hang them to dry with butcher paper below them to catch anything that would fall from them.
Handing you, it's been marked for identification as 185. You recognize that photograph?
Yes, I do.
What does it depict?
This is what the bags look like in the vehicle processing bag after they were hung.
Fairly and accurately show that?
Yes, it does.
Moved into evidence, I'm sorry, Rich. Got it myself.
We got 184, isn't that correct?
Oh, I'm sorry, 184 would be the garbage bag, I'll move that into evidence. 185. Sorry. Could you please tell us which bag is number 1, which one's number 2, and which one's number 3 in this photograph?
So it's hard to see. I had actually drawn it on this, and I believe they were labeled at some point. But I believe this is the outermost, the middle is the middle, and then this was the innermost.
Okay.
side.
And after they were dried out, did you package them?
After they were dried out, they were swabbed for DNA and processed for fingerprints, and then they were packaged.
Okay. So after that process, they were packaged and placed into evidence.
That's correct.
Now, since we're on the topic of DNA, did you take any swabs of the suitcase?
Yes, I did.
Specifically, ma'am, what parts of that suitcase did you swab?
I believe I swabbed all of the handled areas, the pull-up handle, the zipper area. I was, again, looking for areas that are high-touch areas on a suitcase that might have the highest probability to produce any DNA.
Of course you got. Now I'm handing you what's been marked. It is 186. You seen that before?
Yes.
What is that?
This is the swab from the suitcases. I called it the pull-out handle because I'm not exactly sure what it's called, but the handle that pulls up from the back.
Would you mind stepping down with the glove and showing the jury where that is? Okay, so that's the pull-up handle.
That's what I call it.
Sure. Okay. And Judge, may she stay there? Is that
Want to turn the microphone around so they can hear her better?
Yes. Next, ma'am, I'm handing you what's been marked is Exhibit 187. You know where that came from?
The pulled areas of bag number 1,
Okay. And what would that be?
that would be the garbage bags.
Ah, so that came from garbage bag number 1 being Exhibit number 182. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. And did you collect that using the same process that you described earlier?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I'm handing you what I will mark as Exhibit 188. Do you recognize that item?
This is a swab from the areas that appear to be pulled on the bag number 2, the garbage bag.
For the record, bag number 2 is which item?
That is 191, it's the middle bag.
And as far as exhibit is concerned,
183.
okay. Thank you, ma'am. Handing you now 189 for identification.
This is a swab from bag number 3, again in the areas that look to have been stretched or pulled on the garbage bag.
Okay, and for the record, bag number 3 is exhibit number what?
184.
Thank you. You may second. So you collected all of these from those items that you previously testified about.
Yes, I did.
Mayor, at this time, I would move into evidence exhibit 186, 187, 188, 189.
So admitted.
Thank you, Ron.
Sir.
Did you ever receive the shackles and handcuffs from the medical examiner's office?
I did on the second, I believe, I responded to the medical examiner's office to retrieve the items that were collected during autopsy, which included the handcuffs and shackle and swabs and victim's clothing.
What did you do upon receipt of the shackles and the handcuffs?
These two items were again swabbed for DNA.
On what portion?
Again, you're gonna look at the chain or the area that cinches down that's kind of rough, and more likely to pull skin cells or DNA off somebody.
Collected those using the same process and procedures that you described earlier?
That's correct.
And it has been marked for identification purposes as 190, 191. What are those two items?
This
When you say
exhibit
this,
190
yes, ma'am.
is the swab from the pair of shackles.
And 191?
191 is gonna be the swab from the handcuffs.
And you collected both of those?
That's correct, I did.
Move to admit into evidence 190, 191.
So admitted.
Ma'am, all these swabs that we've just admitted into evidence, are you able to tell whether they were submitted for testing at the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation?
Based on the tape stating that it was from the TBI lab, I would say yes, they were sent for testing.
Like I don't know, Judge.
Yes, sir.
So, ma'am, I'd like to return for a moment to the 3 garbage bags that we see hanging in the picture. How did you differentiate the various bags from each other?
So I made notes at the MD's office, and then when I got to that location, up here, on the countertop, I made a diagram that because I knew APHIS was going to get involved for fingerprinting, so that they were aware of what the inside versus the outside of the bag was and in which layer was which. I drew out a diagram at the front of that showing as it's hanging on the rope, is the side touching the rope on the inside of the bag or the outside of the bag as to how it was on her body, as well as which layer of the garbage bags it was, whether it was the exterior most or the interior most or the middle. And I believe that's how and Sergeant, now Lieutenant Franklin, was aware of how.
So the bag that was touching Jasmine Pace's body was numbered how?
They would have just been, it would have been the back, like as I'm standing there, the furthest back from where I was.
What number did you assign to the bag that was touching Jasmine Pace's body?
192, I believe.
No, did you number the bags individually?
Oh, so number 3,
1, 2,
yes, 1, 2, and 3.
Yes, ma'am. So which number was touching Jasmine Pace's body?
That would have been number 3.
And the bag, the middle layer bag was bag number what?
2,
And the outermost bag is bag number?
number 1.
Thank you. And you labeled them both inside and outside?
As
For
to
the
what was
APHIS.
touching, yes.
Sure. So the outermost edge of the outermost bag would be outside bag 1.
Yes,
Then you have inside bag 1.
yes,
Then outside bag 2.
yes,
Then inside bag 2.
correct,
Then outside bag 3.
yes,
And inside bag 3.
correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
Carlson?
Good afternoon. It's Mrs. Schubert now.
That's correct, it is, yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Let me ask you about Jasmine's car. You're the one that did the investigation in her car.
That's correct.
Did you collect any receipts on her vehicle?
I would have to refer back to the evidence report, but I believe, I know several of them were photographed. Several receipts were photographed.
Can you please identify this for us?
Yes, this is a receipt for a hemp company.
Can you open it, please? Or do you need scissors?
Yes.
What is that?
And this is an Elevate Hemp Company receipt.
Is that the receipt that you found in Jasmine's vehicle?
Yes.
It's best I can move this in evidence, whatever exhibit number we're on.
Magnitude.
I would like to see, I would like to see.
I got 192 is next. I got the last one, 191 swabs on the handcuffs.
Okay.
May I have the,
Yes, let's catch it, make sure we're on the same page with exhibits. I believe the last exhibit 4 was the swab from the handcuffs, 191. I'll make this one 192.
Here.
I'm sorry, you wanted the document name?
yes.
What?
Mrs. Schubert, when is this receipt dated?
This would be 11/22 of 2022 at 3:16 p.m.
And what is the customer's name?
Jasmine Case.
And what did she purchase?
I'm not really in on the, what all that is, but it looks like hemp, disposable 2G, grape ape, sugar, whatever, sugar cane, slurricane, can't read what that says, and then whatever, emperor?
Thank you, ma'am. Let me ask you about your investigation at Jason Chen's apartment. Did you spray the Blue Star?
I did not.
Who sprayed the Blue Star?
And I believe Investigator Brown,
Who held the light?
Investigator Johnson.
And what did you do?
I was behind the camera.
Was it low light?
There was some light available through the sliding glass door in the bedroom, but in the living room area it was quite dark. So at some points in time, sometimes the use of the light to bring a little more so that someone can see if there is a reaction, what the reaction is on. So sometimes a little extra light is used.
Did you have auxiliary lights?
We did not.
Wouldn't auxiliary lights be useful?
Sometimes it's overpowering. The way you adjust your camera, sometimes that a flash of light. We're not turning lights on like in this room. When we're utilizing a flashlight, it's more, you turn it on, turn it off. It's just a burst of light, not a constant light. So a flashlight or some sort of external light would just be used quickly.
Wouldn't you say the brightness of the light might change the brightness of the fluorescence of the Blue Star?
No, ultimately not. The light is just lighting the environment. The camera is still capturing the same result. So with the light off, you would almost argue that it fluoresces more with no other external lighting than without it, or with it.
You weren't in the courtroom, but we saw these Blue Star pictures that you took, right?
Some of them, yes.
Who took the others?
There were some taken prior to me getting there.
Had someone already applied Blue Star before you got there?
I think they took a couple before I got there, yes.
Who?
I would not be able to answer that.
Why do you, if you know the reason, why wouldn't they wait for you to get there?
Sometimes people have difficulty with their camera, and I think that's what they were having, is they needed some assistance with the documentation portion on the camera, which is why they called me to assist with the camera settings.
Because one person has to control the light,
If you have that many people, yes, one person controls the light.
and one person has to spray the Blue Star, right?
Yes.
And then one person has to take the pictures.
If you have that many people to provide that, yes. Sometimes somebody taking a picture might also have to flash a flashlight if you don't have 3 investigators available.
So you weren't in here when we saw all these pictures. Sometimes the Blue Star on that screen looks very different than the Blue Star on that screen. Why is that?
I would assume it's the resolution on the monitors.
So when you get these pictures, the resolution of those pictures can also change the fluorescence of the Blue Star, or the strength of the fluorescence of the Blue Star.
I'm not a camera expert, so I wouldn't be able to tell you. I know that in person, the reactions were very bright in person, as well as what it showed on the picture.
Did you Blue Star the walls in the bedroom?
No.
Why not?
They had a layout of what they were blue starring, and like I said, I was there to just capture the reaction.
So it wasn't up to you.
No, I was not making decisions. It was not my scene.
Did you Blue Star the bathroom, the walls of the bathroom?
The walls of the bathroom, I do not believe, no.
What is the Castlemeyer test?
It's a presumptive test.
Castlemeyer is a presumptive.
Presumptive, yes. It's also known as phenolphthalein. It's part of the phenolphthalein test. We do not refer to it as Castlemeyer.
What do you
We use hemosticks. We also use OBTI because it's blood specific for human blood, as opposed to phenolphthalein.
Are all those tests presumptive tests?
They all are,
Okay.
including Blue Star.
And there is testing that you could have done that would confirm blood. Not presumptive, but could confirm it, right?
All of the tests we do on scenes are presumptive tests. At no point in time do we do any confirmatory other than an OBTI will tell us it's human.
There are tests available to investigators. You may CPD, Chattanooga Police Department may not have them, but there are tests that forensic investigators can use at the scene to determine whether or not it is blood and can confirm it, right?
I'm sure there is some sort of machine or something out there that can be used, but we do not possess it.
So you said that there were spots of what you call cast-off on the walls of the bathroom.
I described what cast-off was, and I also described what the stain looked like. I did not do a blood stain analysis at this scene, so I'm not labeling anything as a a specific pattern. I'm describing what the stain looks like.
The stains on the bathroom wall, that you call that cast off, am I wrong?
I did not call it cast off. That's how it was described to me, and I described the stain and what the stain looked like.
Was that misleading to call it cast off then?
No, I did not do an analysis at the scene, so I'm not labeling it as any type of pattern. I'm describing what this stain specifically looks like, which could be consistent with a cast-off pattern when looked at the totality of the scene.
Did you do a swab of the stain on the bathroom wall?
I did not know, it was not my scene.
So there was no confirmatory tests performed on that, right?
That's correct.
It wasn't collected as a swab,
That's correct.
and because there's no swab, nothing was sent to TBI.
That's correct.
If it was cast off, you don't know which object, if an object it came from.
No, it could have been a hand, it could have been a knife, it could have been a blood-bearing object in motion.
Could have been a t-shirt. And it could be anything.
In essence, yes.
Did you observe blue star reactions on the floor?
Yes.
Did you see any footprints?
I would have to go back and examine those better to see if I mean, I guess some of the stains potentially could have looked like prints of some kind.
So I was talking about shoe prints there. Did you see footprints?
No, it was shoes.
But you saw no footprints.
I would have to go back and look at the photos.
Investigator Johnson, who testified right before you, said that she saw a footprint without toes. Did you see what she saw?
I didn't examine those photographs as closely as she did, so I wouldn't be able to say.
Did you see any wiping in the blue star?
I do believe that in some of the photos I saw what looked like smearing, maybe.
Smearing. What about like swipes?
Swipes and wipes are usually described in bloodstain pattern analysis of stains that you would see on a wall.
Right.
But on the floor where you're cleaning it up, I'm saying more of like if someone was to take it and do this on the floor as they're trying to clean it. So yes, a swipe or a wipe would be a bloodstain pattern term, yes.
And you saw that?
There were areas where I saw, like if something had been moved around, yes.
What about slippage? Did you see slippage
As far as on the body,
on the floor of the blue star?
I don't know, I was not looking at that.
What do you know what leucocrystal violet is?
Leucocrystal violet is also a blood reagent that is used to enhance blood. It's a light purple color.
Did you use that?
No, I did not.
Have you ever used it?
I have in training, yes, I have. We just recently purchased it and received it, so we have not been able to use it on the scene yet, but I have used it in training as well as at the NFA.
And it makes these patterns in the blue star easier to see, right?
It enhances blood, kind of like Blue Star, except it's a purple color, or Amigo Black does the same thing.
And Chattanooga Police Department just got this technology?
We received it, yes.
And is this a new technology?
It is not, but we've been using the same kind of chemicals for a long time, and as prices change and as money becomes available, we're trying to upgrade what we have available to us as investigators. So now, yes, we do have leucocrystal violet or LCD.
So with more funds, you can do better investigations.
With more funds, we can buy more to assist in investigations, yes.
You walked, so you came after a Blue Star application had already been applied,
That's correct.
and you walked through the scene?
I with Moody's applied, yes.
Would blood go on the booties? If there was blood on the floor, would your booties soak up the blood?
If there was pools of blood or fresh blood, yes, it's potentially yes, you would pick it up.
What about dry blood?
Usually, it doesn't just pick up and move around with dry blood.
What if the carpet was damp with cleaning materials?
I don't believe I mean, is it possible? I can't say it's out of the realm of possibility, but the investigators walking around don't make singular drops on the ground.
It's possible for even crime scene investigators to contaminate a scene, right?
Not saying it's impossible.
Let me ask you about these the handcuffs and shackles that you described. Were these the kind of handcuffs that law enforcement used?
I wouldn't know. I've seen several different types, brands, makes, models of handcuffs.
Did you collect these handcuffs into evidence?
I did.
Okay. Were they lightweight or heavy?
They were decently heavy.
Okay. One of the handcuffs had the key attached to it.
I believe it was the handcuffs.
Yeah, you had talked about a chain, right?
Mhm.
Then what was on the end of that chain?
On the shackle, I don't recall what was at the end of the shackle part. The handcuffs had keys hanging from the middle.
Was there a mechanism on the handcuff, a button you could press that would instantly release it?
I didn't fidget with the handcuffs. I took the swabs and I secured them.
I don't want to know if you fidgeted with it.
No, I don't. I don't touch the mechanisms on it in case that was going to be sent off for testing.
I'm not asking you if you touched the mechanism or see if the mechanism worked. I'm just asking you, did you observe the mechanism? Did you see the button on there?
I don't recall that.
Just one moment.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mrs. Schubert.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Jury, have any questions for Mrs. Schubert? was basically asking for information about the question process. If you recall, we went over this in the preliminary jury instructions where you were advised you would be allowed to ask questions. The questions not asked, are they denied by the judge or the attorney? If you recall those preliminary jury instructions, there are lots of reasons a question might not be asked or be asked in different language. It might be unfair to the defense. State answering the question. The question might be better answered by another witness. The question might not be asked because the parties have agreed that that's not relevant to this case. So the takeaway is that you can't speculate on why any question was asked or not asked or asked in different language, because doing so would definitely be unfair to one side or the other. So you can't speculate, because it could be not asked for a very important reason or not so important reason. So don't speculate about it, okay? One of the questions was regarded DNA fingerprints found on the suitcase, the victim's body, trash bags, handcuffs, and shackles. Another witness coming later may answer some of those questions for you. Oh, counsel approach. Just a question at the bottom of this. There was another question on the bottom of this I didn't catch the first time. The question is, was the victim drug tested? That answer will also come in through a different witness. All right, Ms. Schubert, the jury has a question for you. I'm going to read the question. If you could face the jury and answer, please. What was the significance of collecting the gray quarter zip shirt?
I can't, at the time, I was not aware. I know in Detective Cottrell from Homicide they had been out looking earlier that day at different leads. And when she came back, she said that it was of value, that quarter zip was, and that they needed it collected. So I re-entered the apartment. I hadn't left the scene yet, and collected that item that she had requested.
Any redirect based on the jury's questions? Any redirect? Okay. All right. Thank you, ma'am. You may sit down. General Fire, next witness.
State call Craig Martis, Your Honor.